Do you really know who you are? Do you know who your children are? Do you know who your partner is? What about your employees? Do you ever find yourself getting frustrated because you feel like you can accomplish something better than someone else? And you're like, what is wrong with them? Today, I'm really excited to share with you Nicole Laino. She is what she calls herself a type A hippie. That's what she calls herself. She is a former corporate gal, a founder of a tech startup. She's a Reiki master / teacher. And who is she? She's a free spirit who can grow a business and meet a deadline, which is what I love. So I met Nicole a little while ago and she interviewed me for her podcast and we had a beautiful conversation. And what I loved about our conversation was what we were talking about regarding identity. And a lot of the women that I attract know what it's like to be in the professional world. They know what it's like to have an identity around performance, but they don't know what it's like to have an identity around feelings and how we can integrate both at home and in the workplace and really feel that alignment within ourselves. And Nicole talks a lot about human design. And I'm sure some of you are human design lovers, and some of you have never heard of it before. And today, Nicole dives into what human design is and how we can use it with our children and our partners and our employees or teams or whoever the hell we're working with. And we can really begin to see and understand each other. Because what works for me is not going to work for you, and what works for you is not going to work for your children, and what's going to work for your children is not going to work for each child, and so on. And when we really begin to see and understand each other, this is where we find connection and empathy. And there was something that Nicole mentioned that really hit home with me. And it was, you are either going to get what you came for or you're going to learn. And I want you to lean into today's episode with this in mind. Life doesn't always go the way that we want it to go. Right? Sometimes it's a form of control. But when we let go and surrender and we give ourselves permission to say, maybe I didn't get what I wanted along this journey, or taking action on this or that, but I learned a lesson along the way. It's the lessons that we learn that give us the self-awareness that we need to become fully ourselves and live in alignment with how we want to feel. You're going to want to listen to today's episode with Nicole. It's magic. And you're definitely going to want to go check out her website, NicoleLaino.me, NicoleLaino.me, and get your human design chart read. She even does readings. And so if you're not going to get one for yourself, definitely get one for your child. It will help you out greatly. So let's dive in. Hello, Nicole. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Heather. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so freaking excited to have this conversation with you. The internet is such a small world, but I feel like this is where we find our people. And I asked you before we hit record to tell me more about the type of woman that you attract and work with. And we're going to get into this. And you said, I call them the recovering hustler. You said the recovering, type A, burnout, the seeker. And it wasn't until I went online that I was like, these are my people. These are my people, because we're seeking online, the podcast, the self-help, all of that. So welcome. Just give us a little background of who you are, the work that you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I am one of those women. I think we usually help some version of ourselves, an old version of ourselves. I affectionately refer to myself as a type A hippie. I had a career on Wall Street. But I was an actor before that. So I had this kind of this pendulum swinging from super feminine creative energy to really masculine, like Wall Street doesn't really get a whole lot more masculine than that feeling. And I excelled in both places. I did really well in both places. However, I always felt like I had to be one or the other. And when I burnt out on my Wall Street career, I left. And it was like my first real intuitive hit that I could say that I had was when it was like, this is not for you anymore. Like, get out. And I listened, even though it didn't make sense, even though I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea how this is all going to work or unfold. And that leap of faith led to just, you take a step and it's like, oh my God, there's ground there. I couldn't see it before, but I took the step and it was there. And that was my first taste of that. That led me out from New York to California, where I went back to acting to just sort of find myself again. And that's what I mean about like that seeker. I've always had that element to me, but there was always a part of me that was just like, do the smart thing. And the less I started to listen to that, the more aligned I became. So fast forward, I started a tech startup company. I had that still exists to this day. It's called Halo CRM. And then that led into like my coaching career by working with the women who came on to learn how to use the tool. I ended up coaching them on other things, on their business and on, being a businesswoman and what that really means. And as that unfolded for me, everything just evolved. Now, where I'm at now, I really focus on my zone of genius, which is cracking those women open in the best possible way to say, you don't have to throw away the type A part of you. It's there. It's different. You are strategic. There's a part of you that's there. However, don't lean on it because you feel like you have to. Don't lean on it because you feel like it is the way. And that way of thinking is sort of what's led me down my path of figuring that out for myself. And so I'm trained in EFT. I'm a human design coach, which we're going to talk about human design here. I'm a Gene Keys guide. I have a lot of modalities that I work with. I'm an NLP practitioner. So it's all been about finding the best version of you. So that's what I work with. I work with female entrepreneurs who are in that type A hippie category, who have tried everything and who have a lot of voices in their head right now telling them that this is the way, that is the way, that is the way. And I feel like that's almost where some of us have to come to, where you have so many voices in your head telling you, pointing in different directions and telling you this is the one way, that's the thing that gets you to stop and say, oh my God, I have to find my own way because I can't listen to these voices anymore. And that's the work that I'm good at and that I find the most joy in myself, is helping you find that way.
I love that you talk about the type A hippie, because I feel like we had this conversation too, that we attract very similar women, but we support them in different ways, which is like when you meet your people, you're like, yes, yes, yes. And this is how we're changing the world. This is how we're changing the world. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about people that may be listening to this that are like, holy shit, I need to connect with Nicole because she's speaking my language. And we fall into this trap. So I'm curious your thoughts on this, but we fall into a trap of this is just what it is. This is life, right? Like, I'm an adult. I'm raising a family. I have responsibilities. And then we get into this all or nothing mindset, or I see a lot of that where it's like, I'm either in my corporate job, or I'm a full-time now stay-at-home mom, or I am leaving corporate and starting a business. And I see women do this all the time where I'm like, and then they go back and it's like more confused. So what is your thought on that, especially when it comes to human design, and maybe just giving a little tidbit about what human design is first to open that up for people who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that question, because we really do. And you step from one paradigm to the other. And that's one of the things that I really look at with people, particularly women who are having trouble with money or making it on like the entrepreneurial side or on the other side of like the corporate world. Because it was fascinating to me, because I faced this as well. I had success, but I didn't have like the level of success I thought I would have out of the gate. Because I was like, in my mind, I was like, if I work as hard as I work for my corporate gig, where I'm like literally leaving a pint of blood on the floor every day when I leave the trading floor, if I give that level of effort and time, oh my God, what am I going to create on the other side? And oddly, I created about the same thing. I created about the same amount of money. I had more freedom technically in some ways, but not in other ways. It gave me the freedom to seek, which to me was valuable. So I was like, I know I'm on the right path. But it was fascinating to me. And I saw so many women falling into this, powerhouses in the boardroom, in the corporate environment, in their structured world. But they come over to the other side and they can't seem to make that work. And it rattles who they are. Their identity gets shook. And it's really about being able to see the two paradigms, to see that, and neither one is real, just one you believe in more. When you believe in the structured paradigm of I work hours, I get money. I show up for work, I've earned what I get paid. When you are in that paradigm structure and then you leave it and then you go into the other one, which is I create money, I attract it. I create through my energy, which produces effortless effort in the highest frequency of it, where the work feels good. And that's when what are referred to now, kind of overly used, but as like quantum leaps, where people are just like, they have these giant blow ups in their businesses or blow ups in their lives where things are just going insanely well. That really comes from an energetic alignment of just saying, this is not mine. I worked with Coach James Wedmore years ago, and he used to say this all the time. And it became like my mantra in my head, which was, I will either get the result that I want or the lesson that I need. And that's it's not something to make you feel like you should be doing more all the time. But if you can come to it with that energy, in the paradigm of creating, of nothing I can do is possibly wrong here. It's either going to work or I'm going to learn. And if you can really come from that place, magic happens. Just most of us don't subscribe energetically and in our mind enough. So one of the powers of human design for me, how this ties in and how that has really skyrocketed my work and the work that I do with my clients, is everything that I just described about the paradigms is, I talk about it in energy, but it starts in your mind. It's your mind that keeps you subscribing or from subscribing to one or of these paradigms or creating your own. It's your brain. Human design literally is designed to take you out of your brain. No authority. Authority is our decision-making mechanism in human design. It tells you what's the wisest part of you, what's the area that you have the greatest consistency in, and rely on that, not on something you don't have consistency in. And we can talk more about what consistency and inconsistency means in human design. But it takes the power, the decision-making power away from your brain. So everything that you're conditioned to believe, everything that you were told was right or wrong, all of the things that we're trying to fight with mindset work by rewriting our thoughts, you can do that. Chances are they will probably go back. You have to do some really deep work and it can take a long time. But if you take the power away from it, it can happen a lot quicker, where you're putting it someplace else and you're putting it on your body. And that's very powerful.
So much that I want to go into here. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So I think the fundamental unlearning is, I don't want to say I matter, but like, oh, I'm unique, right? Because we do live in in a world where it's, who does the world want me to be, or who should I be versus who am I, right? So outside to in to out. And that shift in itself is big. So I know we can get to the nitty gritty of human design, and either people have heard about it or not. They're either into it or they're not into it. And maybe they're listening to this going, I keep hearing about human design, so I should, or I'm going to lean more into this. How has knowing your human design given you permission to live a different way? Does that make sense?
Totally. So one of the things I mentioned this to you before we hit record, that the way that I look at human design. So human design, just to give everybody who isn't familiar or has heard of it, but doesn't really know what it is, it is a combination of a lot of systems, ancient systems, and different, cosmic wisdom that's been out there for a long time. It combines quantum physics, some of the Western astrology, the Hindu chakra system, the Kabbalist tree of life, and the Chinese I Ching. These are all brought together into one system that based on your birth date, your birth time, and your birthplace, gives you an energetic blueprint of who you are. It shows you how energy is concentrated in your being. And basically, we have when you download your chart, you'll see that there are different colors. You'll see like there's colored shapes, there's these colored in lines, and there's 64 numbers all over the chart. Anything that's colored in is what we call definition, meaning that is consistent energy in your body graph. It's consistent energy, and they all have different themes. And where you're white in your chart, that's what we call undefined. That means that you are going to experience other people's energy more because it's open, because that's where you're going to feel more stuff. And I always say that you have kind of a big bullshit detector in your white space. When you're clean there, you can feel someone else's energy. And that's why people who are really open tend to have like a psychic sense of just like whether they like somebody or not, whether someone's telling the truth or not, whether someone is being honest or not. But where you're defined is who you were meant to be, what you're meant to put out in the world. What you're white and you're meant to experience. It's where we receive. It's where we receive information. When you know who you were designed to be, you also know who you were designed not to be. We're not meant to live and put out stuff from our white space. Mm-hmm. So typically what happens is when you have white space, a lot of times you'll find that people working out of like an open ego, they'll be really focused on being driven. And they'll beat themselves up for not having enough willpower to get things done. They're working out of alignment. They're just working with their energy. I'm going to use the term incorrectly or inefficiently is really how it works. When we work out of the definition in our chart where we have consistency, it's like a reservoir that keeps replenishing itself. It's energy that's always there. So it's always available to us. So it's very little effort for us to use it. When we try to work out of our open space, it's like you're pouring water into a bucket with holes in it. Mm-hmm. And it just keeps draining and draining and draining. And that leads to burnout. And that usually leads to us feeling like we are not enough. That's why in our white space, we tend to feel like we're not enough. And the fears of the defined areas are we feel like we are too much. When we start to know this stuff about ourselves, we say, I was designed to be this and I was not designed to be this. Well, when you know who you were designed to be, then and you stop trying to be who you're not. You are free to be who you are. You can look at it and say, well, maybe that has never felt good to me because it's not supposed to, rather than that never felt good to me because I'm just not as good as her and she can do it and she does it so well and she had so much success. So you stop looking at everybody else as a comparison to you, which obviously we've been told that forever. Don't compare yourself to others. Easier said than done. But this sort of gives you that overlay to say, and to look at other people and yourself with more compassion and to say, oh no, but I have other strengths. Look at mine. Mm-hmm. And if I use my energy properly, if I follow my strategy and authority, which is sort of the mechanism that human design gives you to tell you whether you are to guide you toward alignment. If I use that, then I get to use all the parts of me in very high frequency. So if you're thinking about like dials all over yourself where you can say, oh, this one's just a little bit into shadow frequency, I can turn that up. Yeah. So it's very, very specific to how you can fine tune yourself rather than thinking like, I'm broken.
Yes. Yes. So this reminds me a lot of different quote unquote, I'm not saying personality tests, but I'm saying nature-based systems that people can identify with or like the first thing that comes to my mind has nothing to do with personality tests. I'm thinking about cycle syncing, like the female cycle and cycle syncing. The second I was aware of that and in tune with it, what I say is I unhooked myself from the shame or the guilt, right? Where I'm like, I'm on day X of my cycle. This is where my energy is. What's going on? Like there is this intuitive connection and relationship that you are building with yourself to get to know yourself. It's a self-awareness tool. So one, I'm thinking about children. I talk a lot about children. That's my passion, is seeing and understanding children's behavior. And if you have multiple children, you're like, where did you come from? Right? You're like, you are being raised by the same adults and so different. never as a child did anyone say, let's get your human design chart read, right? Or let's learn more about who you are. The only thing that was around is like, let's go get a psychic reading or something like that. So how would knowing your child's human design chart really benefit, one, how you parent them, how you're guiding them into adulthood? I have a 17-year-old. This is very interesting to watch and observe the pressure that he puts on himself. And also like where he's going, because when you decide to traditionally or like parent untraditionally, it's fascinating to see the pressure that people put on themselves from society versus like who they are and who they should be out in the world. So human design and parenting.
It's an incredibly powerful tool. I will speak from, I have a lot of clients where I've advised them on, I take in their whole family's charts because relationship dynamics, because where we are. So if you're defined in an area, so for example, I do have your chart. I'm just going to use this as an example. Your throat is undefined and mine is defined. So if we lived in the same house and I was telling you to go out and be a speaker, and because I'm a speaker and I love it so much, and I put pressure on you, my child, to be a speaker, or my friend, my roommate that I'm living with, and I'm telling you that you should be a speaker, and I tell you should do it like me. And that, in your openness, you take in that pressure. In high frequency, I'm just there with that energy that you can feel and take in and use and find your own way. That's the higher frequency. Where we are, what can happen is you can have a parent with a defined ego, with a child with an undefined ego, and the parent is telling them to go and work harder and push. All of these places, this is what developed what we call conditioning. How someone made you feel like you should be a certain way because they were. Or even I can think about, like, my sister and I have beef with my mom for certain things that she didn't do. We love our mother, but she didn't enroll us like in any sports or any sort of like extracurricular activities, really. And my sister in particular, she's just like, we didn't do anything. So now to her, she's like, I want my kids to have access to everything. So they're enrolled in lots of things. Now, that was right for my mom because doesn't have the energy to do things like sports. Looking at her chart now, she's super open. So to her, it was natural. She parented the natural way. My sister now taking her experience and applying it based on what she wished she had is now creating the environment for her kids. And I'm not saying whether that's wrong or right, but that's how we do things. We say, I didn't like this, so that's how I'm going to do it differently. Might not be right for the kid. So I take relationship dynamics into every coaching relationship that I come into. I'm like, give me your kids' birth dates and stuff. And I have a 5-year-old, or almost 5. He'll be 5 in November. And he's a projector. So the difference is there are 5 different types in human design. I'm just going to run through this so it's easy for reference. There's 5 different types, and the type categories, really what they do, the benefit of knowing what they are, is they give you a strategy, which tells you kind of how the universe is sending you things that are aligned, how you receive your messages and how you receive opportunities. And it tells you really how your energy is meant to be used, what access you have to the energy to do things. So there's a manifester, which they're sort of like the top of the totem pole in the sense that they are the initiators. They do not have a sacral center defined, meaning they don't have access to the energy to do everything. They're the spark that lights the flame. They're like, I have this idea. I want to go in this direction. And they are the pioneers in that way. They're the visionaries in that way. They kind of want to go in, get in, start the idea, and then they really don't want to build it because they don't have the energy to. There's nothing wrong with them if that they are like this.
Or am I a Manny Gen or a manifesting?
You're an emotional generator.
Okay.
And none of these are bad. See, that's usually what happens. People get one and they're just like, I got mine. And I wanted to be a projector because I wanted someone to tell me that I didn't have to work as hard. And it was
I just
wrong.
find that fascinating because I've taken it multiple times and I've had my chart before and it turns out different every time.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did check your birth time and everything based on what you gave me. You came up an emotional generator, a 6-2 emotional generator.
Interesting.
But so then there are generators, the generators and manifesting generators. They're two different kinds of, I do consider them separate types. They have sacral center defined. That means that they are here to work. It means we have a lot of energy to do things. It means we are meant to work on things that light us up. So our strategy is to respond. The world gives us things. We see something exciting. We're like, oh, I want to do that. And we are moved to do that thing. And when we are lit up by something, we will have the energy to keep doing it and keep doing it. Anybody who's a generator, you've probably had the experience where you're working on something that's really exciting to you. And you're like, I could do this all day. And I could do this till like I pass out at night. And you stop because you're like, I have to stop because I got to get some sleep. And you have this feeling of satisfaction, like, man, that felt good.
Yeah.
Like work product feels good for us. Projectors, they're kind of the wise guides. They don't have that sacral center energy. The sacral center is that energy to do. Only the generators have that. When you don't have the sacral center defined, you're not here to work 40 hours a week, meaning you don't have the sustainable energy to do that. Projectors are going to work in sprints. Their strategy is to wait for the invitation, meaning you're not meant to jump up every time something excites you. It means that you are meant to be invited into things and provide more of an consultant guide perspective. So they are the guides of our collective. And then there are reflectors. They're only about 1% of the world. They're completely open. They're really here to be the barometer for the community and tell us when something is right or wrong, when things are, and they just feel it. They just know it. So the reason I brought that up is my son is a projector and I'm a manifesting generator. I have a ton of energy. I'm literally going from 5 o'clock in the morning until I pass out at the end of the day. And I do a million things before he or my husband wake up. They are both projectors. Knowing that about my son, I know not to burn him out. I know not to make him move the way I move. I know to build in breaks in our day. I know things that if I didn't know human design, having a stroller for my 5-year-old, like an umbrella stroller with us, a foldaway stroller, probably would have been like, no, you're too old. Like you're going to walk. Mm-hmm. Like I might have had that frame of mind, but I'm like, no, I know that he literally he'll be miserable and he'll be too tired.
Yeah.
I also know that there are lots of aspects of human design that come into play, but I have a friend who has a daughter who's a manifester. She's very strong-willed because she's really put here to have her ideas and to see them through. I want to do this, and she goes. So they can be very strong-willed kids that are doing their own thing and don't want to be told what to do. Most kids don't want to be told what to do, but really the manifestors, they have this forceful energy. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to squash their magic. How do we nurture and parent the kids that we have and not the kids that we think we should have or the ones we think should be like us? So with that friend of mine, she's just we've worked together and she's working with a parenting coach who's part of my world, who's trained in human design to parent her in a nurturing way. Because when we're parenting kids with human design in mind, we are not conditioning them. So all of the work that we are doing to unwind all of the things that were put on us, either on purpose or by accident by our well-meaning parents, we are able to not do that and not set them on a path where they have to break all of the things down that we put them through. Mm-hmm. That they're actually able to know who they are and really love who they are and use their strengths and recognize what their strategy is. My son, because as a projector, his strategy is to wait for the invitation. So when he starts school, I noticed that he wouldn't go in the door. He wouldn't go into the classroom. And so I learned that early on in preschool with him, like 2 years ago. And now I just first day of school or the back to school night that they have before school starts. And I talk to the teacher. I say, he does really well if you invite him instead of suggesting things to him, make it like a formal invitation. you'll notice a huge difference. One, you'll get kind of a puzzled look, and the other one, he will go. The other thing is he's a 5-1, which is his profile, which gives us an idea of kind of the role he's here to play and the way he sees things. He's practical. I'm like, if you need help, he will help you. If you ask him to do something, he's probably not going to do it. But if you ask him, if you come to him, Jake, I'm having trouble with this. Can you help me with this? You'll see him light up. He'll beam. And because it's practical for him, and the 5s are very, very practical. So there's lots of elements that give us a lot of insight into who these kids are meant to be and what their process is going to look like. If your kid is a 3 profile, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. They're going to break things. They're probably going to want to take things apart and put them back together. And that's how they learn. That's natural for them. If they're a 1 line, they're probably going to need a lot of alone time to sort of squirrel away, and they're going to maybe be really book centric and want to dive into things. There's so many aspects of this that help us to nurture exactly who they are and empower them with it.
I love this. It feels like a new language.
Mm-hmm.
Was it overwhelming when you first got into it? How long did it take you to really integrate this into your being and parenting and life?
I'm a bit of one of those bizarre people that when I get into something, I'm a mad scientist. Yeah. So I'm a 5-1, and the 1 line is very much about becoming the expert and building a foundation of knowledge. So I basically, every waking hour that I had, I dove into this information and got my certification and blew through every bit of information that I could find. You do not need to go that far to get a lot out of this. Honestly, even just understanding your type and authority, understanding that you're, this is called Emotionally Uncomfortable, the show. Mm-hmm. One of the things, and so I know that in listening to the show, I know that, you're pioneering an effort and really being a champion of owning your emotions and feeling them. There's a lot of shame around that, and you're understanding your emotional center. Like, we have a center in human design. It's the solar plexus, where the definition there can tell you a lot about the way you experience emotions. If your emotion in the emotional center, if you're open in the emotional center, like my husband and my son are, they tend to avoid confrontation. Emotions make you feel uncomfortable because they're not happening in you all the time. That is really powerful stuff to understand. As emotional, you're defined emotionally, as am I. We have emotions that are happening literally every second of the day. There is a chemical, emotional process that's happening within us. And 50% of the population has that. And 50% of the population is like the rest of my family, where they experience everyone else's emotions. My husband, well, just talking about dynamics again, my husband we're together 18 years. My husband for years would, come near me. I think I'm fine. I'm fine. And he's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. Something's wrong. No, I'm good. And then I get pissed off because I think that he's telling me that something's wrong with me. And he's annoyed because he thinks I'm holding something back. Mm-hmm. Really, what's happening is the energetic dynamics is he can feel it because he's open there, and he's completely open in that center. So he's incredibly sensitive. So he picks up on the fact that I am having an emotional process at the moment, that it's happening internally. I don't see it as anything wrong because this is what I live with. This is my day. This is just Tuesday at noon. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I feel something that feels very uncomfortable to me because I don't like emotions because they're weird to me. They are foreign. So that communication, even my husband is the most straight-laced. He's like a computer programmer. He wants nothing to do with anything that I do, really. But in human design, I explained it to him and explained his design to him. And I remember him coming to me and he was like, this is the only thing you do that's ever made sense to me. And I was like, really? Because this is out there. I'm surprised at that. And he's all into it because it's helped us parent our son in a really compassionate and understanding way and powerful way. And it's helped our relationship, understanding these things about ourselves. So now when he says, what's wrong? I look at him and I'm like, I'm just in my wave. I'm just in kind of like a funky spot of my wave, but I'm fine. Nothing happened. Because nothing needs to happen for emotional people to be emotional. We just are. Yeah. So those things, understanding type and authority, how you're meant to work. So if you're a generator and you sit down and you're trying to work on something because it's on your to-do list and it's not working and you're in frustration, it's because you're not responding to anything. Go for a walk, engage with the world, see what you're given, and then respond when your sacral says yes. And you'll find that you find your flow very quickly. Mm-hmm. These little shifts can be life-changing. You don't have to go into the nitty-gritty of every center and all of your channels. It's intoxicating. You'll get your chart and you'll be like, oh, what's this? What's this? Tell me more about me. But and what I love about human design is, they always say it's not dogmatic. You don't have to believe in anything. It's an experiment. So just try it, because most people who try it are blown away by the change that they see in themselves and the change that they see in other people.
Yeah. And I love, like you just said, be curious, right? Just try it, because and I'm sure based on my chart, you could figure out why I'm like this, but I'm not a fan of labels. You're like, yes, I know why. I enjoy receiving that information, but I'm not obsessed with, now that I have a label, how can I fix it? Right? It's like, that's just data, but also like the rebel in me is like, I'll show you, and how can I, and transitioning. So my point of why I'm saying that is because sometimes I see people getting a design and being like, taking it all in. I've seen this a lot with projectors, and sitting there and saying, I'm waiting for the invitation. And I have a projector friend, colleague, who's very successful. And then I meet other projectors and I'm like, night and day, right? And so sometimes it's knowing, and I'm saying projectors, there's many different, I don't want to say stereotypes, but how people respond, how some people just grab onto it and like, it's black and white. And then other people are like, I can take this as data and I can be flexible with it and I can test it. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
No, I love that you brought that up, because it's not meant to be, it's meant to be empowering, and empowering in the best way, meaning it's not about slapping a label on yourself like, oh, I'm a Mani Gen. And we tend to talk like that because people are sort of excited about the lingo. But for projectors, it's not about waiting for the invitation. It's about recognizing yourself, and then the invitations come. So it's always about asking that question of, how can I look at this through an empowering lens? How can this information be used where I can, and I'm very into asking, just asking any questions that you have. The whole point of human design is to say that we are meant to be in flow. We are meant to have things come to us in some way. If you're a manifestor, divine intervention and creative ideas are just flowing to you. If you're a generator, you're being given things to respond to. If you're a projector, invitations will come to you. And if you're a reflector, you're just going to know over time. Yeah. And you're going to understand things that other people don't. So it's a lesson in trust. It's not meant to be disempowering. I hear that a lot from projectors too. I'm waiting for the invitation. You're not a wallflower. You're not sitting around just waiting for somebody to ask you to dance. No, you're dancing. And you're having so much fun doing it and lighting up and being so darn in love with yourself that people invite you to dance with them.
I love that. I love
That's
that you
what
said
it is.
We're supposed to be in flow. I always talk about we're supposed to feel good. The purpose of life is not to feel like shit and suffer and slowly die. You are supposed to be this expansion and version of yourself. And I think we're all navigating our way back home to ourselves to try to figure out what is that. And I love this conversation. I know you and I could talk forever and ever about human design in general and how that can be of service to somebody in all aspects of their life. So Nicole, where can people find more of you? Because I'm sure they're just on the edge of their seats and they want to get more of you. So let them know what you're up to, where they can find you. And yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I'm on Instagram at Nicole Laino Official. You can follow me over there. I'm always doing something over in that community. If you haven't run your human design chart, we actually do have, we offer a free chart that is an advanced chart. Typically, you'll pay for a lot of the information that we give you for free. So if you'd like to run that and get some more details on your chart, you can do that at nicolelaino.me/chart. And I also offer a reading. So if you go to my website, you can jump in with a reading if you want to dive into your specific design, or do relationship readings with your family and see what that dynamic looks like. Those are kind of the easiest ways to get started. And if you run your chart from our site and you sign up for our email list from there, you'll get a free resource on your type. You'll get a free video from me that kind of gives you an overview of your type and how you can start using it, and just start to experiment with your type and your authority.
Love it. And you have a podcast?
And I do have a podcast. My podcast is called The Limitless Entrepreneur, and I love that show. So please come over. There's lots of human design episodes for you to listen to over there too, if you want to dive in and binge.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. I love this conversation, and I can't wait for the magic to unfold. And I'm going to be on your show as well, where you are going to read my chart. And just pull back the curtains so everyone can go search for my name on your podcast as well.
Beautiful.
Are you ready to take back control of your time and energy? But the thought of where to start feels overwhelming. I created something for you. It's called the Energy Finder Quiz. Yep. This quiz takes less than 2 minutes, and it helps you identify where to focus so you can conquer your dreams without feeling like you're failing as a mother. After coaching hundreds of women, helping them reverse engineer how they want to feel in their personal and professional lives, I started to notice 4 hidden skills that women must master in order to create the work-life balance that they crave. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/life quiz. heatherchauvin.com/life, LIFE quiz, QUIZ, and get started. I even give you specific podcast episodes to listen to based on your Energy Finder quiz results. The goal is to show you where to focus so you can regain your time and energy and become the woman you deeply know you are capable of becoming. heatherchauvin.com/life quiz.